Okay, so yeah, we're gonna talk about. We felt like we wanted to address everybody that's watching the repeated
Yes.
infirmities and those stubborn sicknesses
Yes.
that never break. No matter
Exactly.
you fast, you pray, you take communion, you do it all,
Yes.
and they never break. And this partially is because, and could be because there may be an altar
Exactly.
in their soul, in their bloodline. Explain to everybody what that is.
Yes, you see, so an altar, is simply when in essence an altar is simply a place of, it's an invisible gate in the spirit that allows entry. It governs entry between the natural and the spiritual realms. Now, altars can be righteous or they can be demonic.
Right.
Of course, the first altars in the Bible are righteous because God is the one who designed this platform as a way of meeting with us, engaging man on legal grounds. But the devil is a master copycat. So realize if God is using altars by negotiating his entry in the world of men by a willing human vessel who becomes the gatekeeper, the attendant to the altar, Satan realized I can do the same.
Right.
If I could get a human cooperation. And ever since he managed to get the cooperation of Eve, he has recruited, unfortunately, thousands to millions of people over the age who have been more than willing to open the gate to their bloodline, to their life, to the enemy.
Yeah.
And so when we are talking about these altars, we're talking about these invisible gates that allowing the entrance of demonic powers in the lives of the bloodlines of people. And I'm so excited about getting into that because there are laws that govern these altars. One of the laws of an altar is an altar in the Bible, whether it was righteous or demonic, was always a place of repetitive activity or ritual.
Yeah.
Or ritual. Yeah. So anytime I see something that is repetitive in the life, particularly a life of a child of God,
right?
And if what's repeating violates the nature of God, then I know it's an evil altar in place because God never works against himself.
So okay, guys, just an example, like an altar nowadays, a good altar could be the way you build the presence in your house. You have a place where you go sit every day and you spend time with the Lord and you read your devotionals and you take your communion, you make your decrees, you fast, you pray. That's you building a godly altar to the Lord. But you can also build ungodly, evil, wicked altars in your house too by having idolatry in your life, because that's what was worshipped on the evil altars. They would build this altar and then they would go and worship these demon gods at this altar, and that's the place where they would meet that demonic spirit and worship that demonic spirit and bring their sacrifices. And you think, well, how does that apply to today? Well, if you've made food into an idol, to comfort your soul, you're always eating, even though you're not hungry, even though you don't really need to eat, even though you've had your nutrition for the day, but you still got to have pie. And then after you have pie, you got to have something salty like some chips or whatever else. You start building an altar in your pantry, literally, to a demon god over food, because you think, well, how is food a demon god? Well, back in the day, they always brought sacrifices of food to demon gods, and they laid it on the altar.
Exactly.
Right? But altars, you said repetitive activity. So somebody who keeps on going back to pornography, somebody who keeps on going back to the alcohol, somebody who keeps on going back to the cigarettes, somebody who has a repeated sickness, there may be an unholy altar established in their bloodline.
Exactly. And what's very interesting is altars are known by the altars, number one, are known by the repetitive activity around your life, because the repetitive activity reveals the altar behind it. And so if there's always a cycle of alcoholism in your family, it means that the altar and the spirit behind it, by the way, it's impossible to have an altar without having a spirit behind it.
Yeah.
Because remember, altars facilitate the entrance of spirits in the world of men.
Yeah.
Now, if God is the spirit coming through, that's not a problem, because that's what you need. We need angels, we need God's power.
Yeah.
But when the spirit is from the demonic side, then you have a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we have seen, I remember recently, Katie, I prayed for the guy. He was a Christian, and he's a Christian husband, loves his wife, but she left him. She told him, I'm leaving my husband because he was addicted to prescription drugs. He would sneak out 3 a.m.
Wow.
I mean, thousands of they were spending more money on his prescription drugs than they were doing on the mortgage.
Oh my God.
And she got so tired of it. She's like, you know, and he had been to rehabilitation places.
Wow.
He would be good for the month, go back.
Oh
Then
my
he said to me, it was like a voice would call him.
Wow.
And I mean, as much as he loved his wife, you end up doing it. And
a
so
voice would call him, an altar speaks.
a voice would call him.
Yeah.
And so when his wife left him, I'm telling you, he was so broken because she took the son. He loved his wife and he loved the son.
Yeah.
So the Holy Spirit said, call him, and and he said to me, Francis, it's more than addiction. An addiction, he says, what you call an addiction in the night, I say differently from the spirit realm. He said, God, what do you say? He said, an addict is simply an attendant to one who's unable to escape it.
Yeah, see, okay, real quickly, the attendant to the evil altar. See, whenever an altar was built, even in the Bible, a good one or a bad one, a human being had to attend to it.
Yes.
They had to go and regularly bring sacrifices, regularly bring, their dedications, regularly worship at it. So, when there's an altar that's installed in our life, a human being, many times it's us, has to attend regularly to that altar, and that brings that repetitive behavior.
Exactly.
So what happened to him?
So I called him. I said, I know you may not fully understand what I'm talking about, but the Lord said to me, you're an addict to this altar. And God says, if I deal with the altar, God will deliver. He said, I am so desperate. He said, because I have spent thousands in therapy to get out, only 2 months to relapse.
Come on.
So I took him in the court of heaven, because altars are legal entities in the spirit, so they can only be destroyed in the court of Rome. So I took them in the court of heaven, and he went through a prayer with me. Do you know, it's been 18 months, not one relapse.
Wow.
Totally delivered. How wife
Lord.
is back home, son is back home.
Wow.
They're having the time of their life.
Wow. See, that's amazing. Look, just to let you guys know, I mean, this stuff is real. I just got delivered of an altar of bitterness. And you think, how can that be altar of bitterness? What does that mean? Well, my grandmother was bitter.
Yeah.
My great-great-grandmother was bitter. And what happens is when people display that behavior repeatedly, they actually are building an unholy altar in their soul, and it gets passed down. So I was like, why do I always feel angry and mad and upset and negative? And what is this?
Yes.
And I actually laid down on the floor while you were teaching on altars, and boom, I got the deliverance. I went, it was an altar.
Exactly.
Yeah. So these altars can be established by behavior patterns, by ancestors, their sicknesses, their sins.
Exactly.
All of those
by
things.
soul wounds.
Right.
That by soul wounds that are not that see, if you get a soul wound, that's why your message, Kate, is very important. When we get a soul wound, when it's fresh, that's the time to get healed.
Yeah, right.
Because if you keep it long enough, you start attending to the wound.
Yes, it grows. It gets engraved in your heart, right?
Exactly.
It gets engraved in your soul.
Yes, and the devil sees that and he rushes in.
Yeah, and that's actually in the Bible, guys. It says that in Jeremiah, the book of Jeremiah, it says, and their sins are engraved on their heart with an iron pen. The word heart there actually means the soul. The more you do a behavior over and over and over again, like bitterness, anger, offense, unforgiveness, all that, the more that sin gets engraved onto your soul, and it develops an altar. And then that altar begins to control you, because it becomes the landing strip for a demonic spirit to bring you infirmity, sickness, poverty, and all kinds of issues, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Ken, if you let me, there is a scripture I wanted to read.
Yeah, let's go.
And I know that you've mentioned it before, but I just thought that this would be good.
Yeah.
Because this shows an altar of infirmity, where perennial sickness. When we mean by altar of infirmity, it means where it's almost like, it's about these lingering diseases. I mean, 5 years, 10 years, you are just, because think about the ritual that develops around the 10-year disease, 20-year disease. You have to attend to it. You have to go and get the medication. You have to, it's like, it's really become a ministry to that disease.
It becomes you're ministering to that altar.
Yes.
You're going to bring the medication, then you got to go to the doctor, and you're serving that altar, serving that altar.
Your whole life, it's built in your calendar, what you have to do with.
Wow. As a matter of fact, everybody that's watching, chat in right now. What kind of repetitive activity are you having to do to keep a sickness or a disease at bay?
Yes.
You have to constantly do a supplement here and a pill there and a medication there and a doctor's visit there and a chiropractor there. How do you attend to that altar in order to just try to stay well? Yes. Chat that in right now, guys.
Yes. So in this case, we have in Luke 13, it says now he was teaching, Luke 13 from 10. He
Mm.
was teaching in one of the synagogues on the Shabbat.
Yeah.
And behold, there was a woman who had a spirit of infirmity.
Mm.
18 years, that's a long time. So there's an
Yes.
altar here. She has 18 years. Can you imagine the
Wow.
rituals around this woman's life every day?
Whoa.
Around that issue? And
Right.
and was bent over and could no way raise herself up. But when Jesus saw her, he called to her and said, "Woman, thou art lost." Now that word "lost" is a legal terminology.
Yeah, it means to acquit one accused of a crime.
Yes.
And set them at liberty. So where do you get acquitted of crimes?
Yes.
In the court.
Yes.
So it was Jesus took her to court.
Yes.
But then he also healed her soul.
Yes.
Because it says that she had a spirit of infirmity, guys. And that word infirmity means weakness and infirmity of the body and of the soul.
Wow.
So she went through some kind of trauma. And the trauma probably got worse and worse every day. Can you imagine being bent over like that and having to just get dressed and undressed?
Yes.
And clean yourself and wash your dishes and take care of your house. I mean, talk about ritually having to service that altar and have the trauma in your soul go deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then Jesus, so that's when I saw, I said, my God, this is literally the Lord. We see a classic case of the court of heaven here. But it becomes even interesting when you jump to verse 15. The Lord then answered him and said, "You hypocrite!" When because one of the Pharisees was so upset that why would you heal this one on the Shabbat?
Yeah.
But then he said something in that. He said, "Hypocrite! Does not each one of you on Shabbat lose his ox or donkey from the store and lead it away to the water?" Then he said, so ought not this woman, being a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has bound?"
Yeah.
See, Satan, that word Satan means the accuser. Which means there was something Satan had on her,
right,
that had just been dissolved by what Jesus did.
Right. And the legal landing strips, guys, that the enemy uses to have something on us, like Dr. Myles just said, is the landing strips in the soul.
Yes.
That's why Jesus said the prince of this world is coming, but he has nothing in me that's in common with him. So he has no power over me. And also in the courts, because Satan is the accuser of the brethren. And in Revelations, that actually means one who brings an accusation before a judge.
Wow.
Where do judges sit? In court.
In court.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So
this is a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
So literally, since he took her into the court of heaven and destroyed whatever legal rights Satan was using, and then the altar of infirmity she was attached to, she was lost from it.